Wonder of the Wasteland, Chapter 14, Part 4. Adam walked on, growing more curious and doubtful. Surely this hut had been built and abandoned by some prospector. Yet any prospector could have built a better abode than this. None but a fool or a knave would have selected that perilous location. The ground began to slope a little and become bare of brush, and was dotted here and there with huge boulders that looked as if they had rolled down there recently. No sign of smoke, no sign of life, no sign of labor. Absence of these things strengthened Adam's doubt of people living there. Suddenly he espied the deep track of a man's foot in the sand. Adam knelt to study it. "Made only yesterday," he said. He rose with certainty. Desmukes had been accurate as to direction, though his distances had been faulty. Adam gazed beyond the shack to the right and then the left. He spied a patch of green mesquites and hummocks of grass. There was the water Desmukes had marked. Then Adam looked up. A broad belt of huge boulders lay beyond the shack, the edge of the talus, the beginning of the base of the mountainside, wearing down, withering away, cracking into millions of pieces, every one of which had both smooth and sharp faces. This belt was steep and fan-shaped, spreading at the bottom. As it sloped up, it grew steeper, and the rocks grew smaller. It had the flow of a glacier. It was an avalanche, perhaps, sliding inch by inch and foot by foot all the time. The curved base of the fan extended for a couple of miles in the distance, growing rounded and symmetrical in its lines. It led up to a stupendous mountain abutment, dull red in color, and so seamed and cracked and fissured that it had the crisscross appearance of a rock of net, or numberless stones of myriad shapes pieced together by some colossal hand and now split and broken, ready to fall. Yet this rugged, bold, uneven surface of mountain wall shone in the sunlight. It looks as if it had been a solid mass of granite, shattered by some cataclysm of nature. Above this perpendicular, splintered ruin heaved up another slope of broken rocks, hanging there as if by magic, every one of the endless heaps of stones leaning, ready to roll. Frost and heat had disintegrated this red mountain. What history of age was written there? How sinister that dull hue of red. No beauty shone here, though the sun gleamed on the millions of facets. The mountain of unstable rock towered dark and terrible and forbidding, even in the broad daylight. What held that seamed and lined and sundered mass of rock together? What was waiting? Only time and the law of the desert. Even as Adam gazed, a weathered fragment loosened from the heights, and it rolled off the upper wall, pitched clear into the air and cracked ringingly below, to hurtle down the lower slope, clapping less and less until it ceased with a little hollow report. That was the story of the mountain. Atom by atom, it was in motion, working down to a level. Boulders twice as large as the shack, weighing thousands of tons, had rolled down and far out on the field. Any moment, another might topple off the rampart and come hurtling down to find the shack in its path. And someday the whole slope of loose rock, standing almost on end, would slide down an avalanche. "Well," muttered Adam darkly, "any man who made a woman live there was either crazy or meant her to have an awful death." Adam strode on to the shack. It might afford shelter from sun, but not from rain or dust. Pack saddles and boxes were stacked on one side. Empty cans lay scattered everywhere. A pile of mesquite recently cut stood in front of the aperture that evidently was a door. And on the sand lay blackened stones and blackened utensils near the remains of a still smoldering fire. "Hello, inside," called Adam as he halted at the door. No sound answered. He stopped to look in and saw bare sand floor, a rude, low table made of box boards, flat stones for seats, utensils and dishes, shelves littered with cans and bags. A flimsy partition of poles and canvas with a door separated this room from another and larger one. Adam saw a narrow bed of blankets raised on poles, an old valise on the sandy floor, women's garments hanging on the brush walls. He called again, louder this time. He saw a flash of something gray through the torn canvas. Then he heard a low cry, a woman's voice. Adam raised his head and stepped back. "Elliot, you've come back," came the voice, quick, low, and tremulous, betokening relief from dread. "No, it's a stranger," replied Adam. "Oh!" The hurried exclamation was followed by soft footfalls. A woman in gray appeared in the doorway, a woman whose proportions were noble but frail. She had a white face and large, deep eyes, strained and sad. "Oh, who are you?" "Ma'am, my name is Wansfeld. I'm a friend of Desmukes, the prospector who was here. I'm crossing Death Valley and I thought I'd call on you." "Desmukes? The little miner huge like a frog?" she queried, and quickly with dilating eyes. "I remember. He was kind, but... And you're his friend?" "Yes, at your service, ma'am." "Thank God," she cried brokenly, and she leaned back against the door. "I'm in trouble. I've been alone all night. My husband left yesterday. He took only a canteen. He said he'd be back for supper, but he didn't come back. Oh, something has happened to him." "Many things happen in the desert," said Adam. "I'll find your husband. I saw his tracks out here in the sand." "Oh, can you find him?" "Ma'am, I can track a rabbit to its burrow. Don't worry any more. I'll track your husband and find him." The woman suddenly seemed to be struck with Adam's tone or the appearance of him. It was as if she had not particularly noticed him at first. Once he got lost. He was gone 2 days. Another time he was overcome by heat or something in the air. "You've been alone before?" queried Adam, quick to read the pain of the past in her voice. "Alone? Many, many lonely nights," she said. "He's left me alone, often purposely, for me to torture my soul here in the blackness. And those rolling rocks cracking in the dead of night, and..." Then the flash of her died out, as if she had realized she was revealing a shameful secret to a stranger. "Ma'am, is your husband just right in his mind?" asked Adam. She hesitated, giving Adam the impression that she wished to have him think her husband irrational, but could not truthfully say so. "Men do strange things in the desert," said Adam. "May I ask, ma'am, have you food and water?" "Yes, we've plenty, but Elliot makes me cook, and I never learned how, so we've fared poorly, but he eats little and I less." "Will you tell me how he came to build your hut here, where sooner or later it'll be crushed by rolling stones?" A tragic shadow darkened in the large, dark blue eyes that Adam now realized were singularly beautiful. This place was near the water. He cut the brush here. He wouldn't believe the danger," she faltered. She was telling a lie and did not do it well. The fine, sensitive, delicate lips, curved and soft, sad with pain, had not been fashioned for falsehood. "Perhaps I can make him see," replied Adam. "I'll go find him. Probably he's lost. The heat is not strong enough to be dangerous, and he's not been gone long. Don't worry, my camp is just below. I'll fetch him back today or tomorrow at farthest." She murmured some incoherent thanks, and Adam was again aware of her penetrating glance, staring, wondering even in her trouble. He strode away with bowed head searching the sand for the man's tracks. And presently he struck them and saw that they led down toward the valley. To follow such a plain trail was child's play for Adam's desert site that had received its early training in the preservation of his life. He'd trailed lizards to their holes and snakes to their rocks to find them and eat or die. He was as keen as a wolf on the scent. This man's trail led straight down to the open valley, out along the western bulge of the slope to a dry water hole. Excuse me. From there, the footprints led down to the parapet of a wide bench under which the white crust began its level monotony toward the other side of the valley. Different here was it from the place miles below where Adam had crossed. It was lower, the bottom of a bowl. Adam found difficulty in breathing and had sensations like intermittent rushes of blood to his head. The leaden air weighed down, and though his keen scent could not detect any odor, he knew there was some kind of impurity on the slow wind. It reminded him that this was, in fact, Death Valley. He considered a moment. If the man's tracks went on across the valley, Adam would return to camp for a canteen and then take up the trail again, but the tracks led off westward, once more straggling and aimless. Adam's stride made 3 of one of these steps. He didn't care about the heat. That faint hint of gas, however, caused him concern. For miles he followed the straggling tracks westward to a heave of valley slope that, according to the map of Dismukes, separated Death Valley from its mate adjoining, which is Lost Valley. On the left of this ridge, the tracks wandered up the slope to the base of the mountain and followed it in wide scallops. The footmarks now showed the dragging of boots, and little by little they appeared fresher in the sand. This wanderer had not even rested during the night. The tracks grew deeper, more dragging, wavering from side to side. Here the man had fallen. Adam saw the imprints of his hands and a smooth furrow where evidently he had dragged a canteen across the sand. And then came the telltale signs of where he had again fallen, and he'd begun to crawl. Looks like the old story, murmured Adam. I'll just about find him dying or dead. But better so for that woman who called him husband? I wonder. Adam's years of wandering had led him far from the haunts of men, along the lonely desert trails and roads where only a few solitary humans like himself dared the elements, or herded and sorted in hard camps. But nevertheless, by some virtue growing out of his strife and adversity, he'd come to a sense of something nameless, to feel the mighty beat of the heart of the desert, to hear a morning music over the silent wastes, a still sad music of humanity. It was there, even in the gray wastelands. He strode on with contracted eyes peering through the hot sunlight. At last he espied a moving object, a huge land turtle toiling along. No, it was a man crawling on hands and knees. End of chapter 14.